Colorado's health department knew their employee had faked drinking water quality tests and chose not to tell the public for months.
It'd be better to err on the side of transparency, as difficult as it may be.
Donald Trump confirms his plan is to call up the military for the mass deportations he says will start in Colorado. Tough time to be shopping for an electric vehicle. Federal rebates are likely winding down as Republicans take control, and Xcel's rebate bank is run dry. And the familiar sound of the Peleteros bell, signaling to Coloradans with Mexican heritage that their culture lives here too. That's tonight on Next. The state health department says a chemist there was faking water quality tests. They discovered the problem in February and chose not to tell the public. About 3% of the state's drinking water sources are now being retested for barium, chromium, and copper. Tonight, 9 News investigates why the state chose not to tell anybody. Here's Steve Steger.
The issue is that the high-quality analyses that people paid for weren't done according to EPA standards and cast the conclusions in doubt.
It began with an anomaly, something not adding up inside the state's water quality lab back in February. CDPHE tells 9 News investigates now that a manager back then started looking into a chemist's work and found intentional disregard for protocol around one specific test that looks for traces of metals like copper, chromium, and barium in drinking water. That investigation started in February, but by April, the EPA noted the state still hadn't determined the scope of the problem and had no plan in place to notify the public water systems that may have been impacted that there was a problem. The EPA revoked the state lab certification to do that testing.
So it's going to take a long time to sort through how far back these errors are, what is the impact.
Mark Edwards is a civil engineering professor at Virginia Tech who helped uncover a crisis in Flint, Michigan, where public water was contaminated with lead. We asked him to look over the documents that 9 News investigates obtained through an open records request. He says the problem here is control data appears to be what's falsified, meaning there's really no way to tell if old tests were accurate.
One of the tragedies here is we really don't know. I mean, did the people who submit those samples get told their water was safe when it wasn't? In which case it could cause an acute health risk, or maybe these errors are inconsequential.
The state health department told us there is no evidence of any acute risk to public health and stressed this data problem only impacted about 3% of Colorado's public water systems. But they told the EPA they found problems in data dating back 5 years and originally noticed problems in June of 2022. But didn't do anything about it.
Unfortunately, science is based on trust, and when you're paid as a lab technician, it's assumed that folks don't cheat. And unfortunately, we're getting more and more examples of cheating in laboratory analyses.
So far, we know this impacted 69 of the state's 2,000 or so water systems. We know that because about 10 minutes before we went on the air here, we got a list of them from CDPHE. They include several small towns like Nucla and Aguilar and Bethune, and some schools too, middle schools and elementary schools. We're going to put the full list in the digital version of this story on 9news.com. The EPA tells us while these issues are serious, this again doesn't mean that there was something wrong with the water, just that there's unusable data that can't confirm the water quality met federal standards at the time, Kyle. So they're urging caution. Don't read too much into this, but still a lot we don't know.
I feel like how many times have we been here, right? Somebody makes a mistake, screws up badly, and then the question is, are you going to tell people right away, or are you going to sit on it? What, they found out in February?
They found out in February, notified the EPA about that 2 months later, and then we just learned today that those 69 water districts, some of them learned in August, others learned in October. So that's 6 and 8 months after this initial problem was noticed.
Steve Sager, thank you.
Yep.
President-elect Donald Trump reinforced today how he plans to get around Democratic leaders in cities like Denver and states like Colorado so Trump can carry out his mass deportation plan. He's going to send in the U.S. military. Trump confirmed that on social media today, that his administration is preparing to declare a national emergency and use quote-unquote military assets to carry out mass deportation. Trump's estimated 15 to 20 million immigrants are here without authorization and will be removed. It's unclear which military assets he's talking about. But during his campaign, Trump told Time magazine he was looking at using the National Guard. Trump has promised to begin the deportations in Colorado. He's calling his proposal to deport migrant gang members first Operation Aurora. Democratic Governor Jared Polis has said that he supports efforts to deport violent criminals, but not children and families. Polis has also said that threatening to send in the National Guard from another state, say Texas, would be a violation of state sovereignty. By declaring a national emergency, Trump can sidestep unwilling governors by calling up the National Guard without the governor's consent. President-elect Trump's pick for energy secretary is an oil and gas executive from Colorado who says the bright side of climate change is that all of the deaths from the increased heat will be more than offset by fewer deaths from the cold. Chris Wright is a vocal evangelist for fracking. His company, Liberty Energy, works with that sector. Trump called out his fracking expertise specifically in nominating him for energy secretary. Wright has said that the well-established link between climate change and more extreme weather is quote-unquote fear-mongering. He said there is no climate crisis, and he shares Trump's goal of opening up federally protected lands for oil and gas drilling.
The efforts of the current administration to make it harder to get a drilling permit or to get a pipeline or to drill on these lands, what does that do in effect? It just means we produce a little less oil and natural gas. It doesn't change demand at all. So it just pushes prices up.
Oil production in the U.S. is at a record high. It's higher than it was when President Trump was in office. So what's the problem?
It would be higher.
While Trump has called climate change a hoax, Wright acknowledges that burning fossil fuels is causing the Earth's temperature to rise. But Wright says that all the deaths coming from floods and droughts will be offset by reduced deaths from extreme cold. So let's look now at another way that energy policy will change with a shift both to the Trump administration and to total Republican control of Congress. They're likely to roll back federal tax credits for electric vehicles, and that comes at a time when some local tax credits are also shrinking. Here's Marshall Zellinger with that.
For the first 9 months of the year, nearly 1 in 4 vehicles registered in Colorado was electric or plug-in hybrid. Perhaps it's the $7,500 federal tax credit or the $5,000 state tax credit. And for low-income customers, Xcel had up to $5,500 off. But that money just ran out.
I'm amazed at how fast that money has gone out the door.
Travis Madsen is with the Southwest Energy Efficiency Project, known as SWEEP.
Our mission is to help people save money, to reduce pollution, and to advance equity.
Earlier this year, the Colorado Public Utilities Commission approved Xcel's $264 million transportation electrification plan, the customer-funded plan to enhance electric vehicle infrastructure and to offer rebates on EVs and charging stations. More than 1,100 low-income customers qualified for either $5,500 off a new EV or $3,000 off a used EV. About 100 others are getting this letter in the mail saying while they qualified for the rebate, the account is broke.
Yeah, I think there's a segment of the population, lower income people and families, that may not make the decision to buy an electric vehicle without the support.
The 3-page application did warn that the money was not infinite. On page 3, there are limited funds available to support Xcel Energy's EV rebate program. EV rebates will be issued on a first-come, first-served basis, and Xcel Energy may refuse providing an EV rebate if and when such funds have been consumed.
I'm going to try to keep expanding support, in particular, so more folks on the lower end of the income scale can participate.
Xcel told me today it would not ask the PUC for additional funding, which would ultimately come from customers anyway.
Xcel also said it would not fund it through Xcel funds. They're not the only ones with reduced funding. The state's EV tax credit will actually drop next year as well, going from $5,000 to $3,500. Kyle.
Well, we're about to find out how much people really want these vehicles, right? When you say 1 in 4 is an EV or plug-in hybrid, that's higher than I would have thought it was.
And when you look at all of this, one thing that changed with this Xcel low-income program is that you could stack it. You couldn't originally do that, meaning put them on top of each other. And so that was quite the incentive, that you could really reduce the price of an EV to equal or be less than a gas-powered vehicle. One question that I'm still not certain on does anybody have an EV now that suddenly was expecting this $5,500 or $3,000 and they're stuck with
left hanging.
Right. It's unlikely. You could have applied and then gone to the dealership, or you could have bought it and then expected this check in the mail 6 to 8 weeks later. I haven't heard yet if anybody is in that pot of this.
All right, but if you are, next at 9news.com is how you get in touch. Marshall, thank you. Victim services agencies across Colorado are struggling right now with the loss of federal funding, but you certainly came through for advocates of Routt County. That's a group that serves domestic violence survivors in Northwest Colorado. Your latest Word of Thanks microgiving campaign, between the one-time weekly donations and monthly gifts to the Word of Thanks Fund, has raised more than $30,000 to support their safe house and their crisis line. Your microgiving, $13.7 million worth of it, has impacted nonprofits in every corner of this state. 231 weeks of giving and counting. If you know of a nonprofit that could use our help together as a community, email me, next@9news.com, or text NEXT at 303-871-1491. It's more than ice cream. It is a taste of familiar culture coming when you hear the Paletero's bell.
I want to improve. I want to go above and beyond.
Above and beyond. Yeah, I would say that reading 2 million words is above and beyond, especially if it's in a language you're still learning. You often hear the tinkling bells before you ever see the Paletero and their ice cream cart. Our Angeline McCall spent a day alongside one to hear how he shares both treats and his culture.
A sound that reminds so many of childhood.
Mira, hay de fresa, de coco, de nuez, hay vasitos, bolis.
Are the same bells that mean work for the paleteros.
Pues se acostumbra uno todo el tiempo ya, todos los días.
Every morning, Jesus will make decisions that he hopes translates into good sales.
Más o menos como unas 60 paletas, como 50 vasos.
Some of it is out of his control.
Sí, parece que va a estar caliente hoy.
But he knows he needs to make decisions to make his day more predictable.
Porque ya tengo más o menos un tanteo de cuáles se venden más y por eso más o menos.
Knowledge from his 11 years as a vendor at Paletería Zacatecas off of Morrison Road.
Son 30 con esos. 30.
Of all the decisions, the route is the most important. During the weekday,
Una entrevista.
he'll spend his day in Montbello.
Por ejemplo, entre semana, por eso vengo a las construcciones, porque por ejemplo los niños en la mañana están en la escuela, hay poca gente en las casas, todos están trabajando. Me gusta porque conozco muchas personas, a veces las rutas pueden cambiar, puedo buscar otros lugares y conozco más la ciudad.
And when they hear these bells, it can only mean one thing.
Las tradiciones de México, en México pues así están y pues vienen los recuerdos de niños.
Jesus started this job because it offered flexibility.
Tengo 3 niños y cuando tuve mi primera, la niña, la diagnosticaron con autismo. Y entonces haga de cuenta de que como tenía que ir a muchas citas y tenía que estar en muchas terapias llevándola.
But even with flexibility comes a sacrifice of time
¿Qué color?
for a season that lasts around 7 months.
Sí, pues es un poco difícil por el tiempo que le dedica uno. O sea, porque este trabajo casi es de toda la semana, de lunes a domingo. Entonces, pues descuida un poco uno a la familia y, pues, por ejemplo, mis hijos están en la mañana en la escuela y yo salgo a trabajar como 11 o 12 y ya no los miro hasta que llego en la noche, ya casi cuando ya están durmiendo. Y solamente pues los fines de semana los miro un poco más de tiempo. Por esa parte sí está difícil. Buenas tardes.
When kids come up to his cart, he'll think of his own.
Pues contento porque pienso que pues ellos están contentos que llegue alguien hasta donde está para venderles una paleta o para saborear una paleta.
Just like their parents, one day they'll hear the bells and remember the taste of childhood. But for now, they'll enjoy it.
Jesus says he'll go out as long as the temperature is above 60 or even 50 degrees. Last year, that meant his season stretched into December. He tells us in the off-season, tries to pick up some construction or administrative work. Kathy Sabin, that likely meant that Jesus was out there today, but not tomorrow.
That's right. Temperatures tomorrow, Kyle, will be in the 30s. We are watching a passing shortwave coming into northwestern Colorado as we speak, already producing scattered snow showers. And those snow showers will move across Denver tomorrow morning between 5:30 and 8. We're not forecasting accumulation for Denver, but we are for the high country. Temperatures down to 48 in Denver after a high close to 60 today. The winds are really picking up over some of the higher passes in advance of this system approaching from the northwest. We're settled in between two storms this evening, and this system already producing snow on I-70, Vail Pass, up around Craig, Meeker, and Steamboat. 2 to 4 inches of snow expected in the mountains. For Denver, it'll just be passing snow showers, but timing is everything during the morning drive. The system rolls out in the afternoon. It will be a cold and windy afternoon, and so morning snow showers, partly sunny, high 39, and then a nice string of days, sunshine and 60s for Thursday, Friday, heading into a beautiful weekend.
It could help me improve my English and Spanish if I read more.
He's working on it one word at a time, and he's about 3 million words in. How did your generation get incentivized to read? I was in the Pizza Hut certificate for a personal pan pizza generation. I want you to meet a student in Sunnyside who took on a 4,000-page challenge. Our Byron Reed has that.
It tells the adventures of a man who spent 10 years.
Reading can take you on a journey.
It was war that forced Odysseus to leave his home.
But for 7th grader Aiden Mejia,
Reading. I just love reading.
the library at Rocky Mountain Prep Sunnyside started an adventure.
It just intrigued me. I don't know why. I just love reading.
Aiden and his classmates were challenged to read 2 million words during their summer break and into the school year. Aiden thought the assignment would help him in the classroom.
It could help me improve my English and Spanish if I read more.
Aiden is bilingual with Spanish as his first language. He reached the 2 million word milestone by reading the Harry Potter series and passing tests on each in both English and Spanish.
It could help you with your education, and you can learn how to write and speak better in other languages.
We do know that literacy is such a foundational skill for kids, and it's going to really take them far.
Elizabeth Rifkin is the assistant principal of instruction for the school and wants to close the learning gap.
We want to ensure that they have every opportunity they can to achieve their goals of going to college, and that is going to really start with being able to read and falling in love with reading from an early age.
If that's the price of a happy old age, then you must make that journey.
It was an odyssey for Aiden that he was able to experience,
Knowing that there would be a peaceful end to all his travels.
and put him on a pathway to academic success.
Because there's probably some words I didn't even know existed in English or Spanish, so I could just help myself with that.
For Next,
Because I want to improve. I want to go above and beyond.
I'm Byron Reed.
Aiden's passed that goal. He's now at 3 million words, hoping to read 5 million before the end of the school year. We are back with your feedback next. Thank you. Lenny and Judy write in tonight that they are devastated by the election results and don't know what to do. They say it's like a death in the family. Lenny and Judy, I think that there are folks who are bound to feel like that no matter how the election turned out. The only advice that I would offer you, because you asked for it, is this. Lean into building the community and the country that you want to exist. There's always people out there doing the work, regardless of how elections turn out. So get in there, be a part of that. See you next time.